Mark Bowen from the Equine Veterinary Association. Hopefully you can enlighten us a bit more on what morphine in these horses' feeds, what effect that can have on the horse, Mark.
Well, morphine is a very powerful painkiller, but in the amounts that we are likely to be seeing it in these cases, it's unlikely to have any effect. It's minimal trace amounts due to poppy seed contamination of feed that seems to be the culprit in these cases.
Okay, and how exactly would these substances get into feeds? Are we talking about locally at the yard where poppy seeds, blow themselves into the and contaminate the feed, or is it a bulk problem?
Yes, it's a bulk problem. We're not talking about red poppies that you see growing in the UK countryside. We're talking about opium poppies, which are not native to the UK. They are grown in licensed conditions in the UK, but on the whole, these are bulk problems in imported grains. The feed companies do a fantastic job in checking for them, but it only takes one seed head in a batch to cause a positive sample. And unfortunately, they can't test the whole batch. They test a portion, and it might be that the poppy seed is found in just a very small part of that batch.
So I suppose two more questions then, Mark. Is it likely that if you were to test the majority of these horses post-race, that morphine samples would be found? And the second question I'd like your insight on is, to what extent would trainers actively use morphine to quell the pain of a horse, whether it be post-race or training?
Okay, so in terms of the second question first, it's not a drug. It is a drug that's used as a very potent painkiller, but it's used in horses undergoing surgery, and that's the reason it's banned by the BHA, because it is such a potent painkiller, and the idea that animals could race on painkillers is obviously a very negative thing. It could cause severe injury. So this isn't likely to be a drug of abuse. It's very likely this is just batch contamination.
So yeah, the batch contamination, and probably a question that's should well be posed to the BHA, but to get your side on it, why exactly is this a banned substance then, and why should horses such as Estimate, of course the Queen's horse, may well be revoked of its placing in this year's Gold Cup and the £80,000 that rightly went with it? Why should these places be reversed, and why should horses be disqualified for something that seems an act that was out of the control of the owner or trainer?
Well, unfortunately, because there is this slight potential for morphine to be abused, then it is necessary that it remains a prohibited substance. It is highly regulated as a medicine for use in animals. It's every time a vet will use it, they have to keep a register. It's not something that would easily get into horses other than in a hospital setting. But even so, it's entirely appropriate that such potent painkillers are excluded, because if you raced a horse that was receiving morphine, then the risk of further injury could be catastrophic, and that animal could undergo fatal injury.
So to keep them banned seems the wise decision, but can you see from your expert point of view, really, in terms of medicine, a way round this, a way in which we can test the substance and say that there was only a very small amount, so it must have been a mild contamination, or is it a simple no-tolerance policy? Because, of course, this can lead trainers such as Willie Mullins in 2002 to say that it was a total injustice. What's the way around this?
It's very difficult to see a way around it, and actually the feed companies have done a fantastic job in terms of generating codes of conduct and ways to try and minimize the risk. Unfortunately, whichever company you're talking about, there's always going to be the risk of contamination by any of these naturally occurring prohibited substances, including morphine. The only thing that the BHA could do is potentially change their threshold for detection, but they already have a threshold for detection of this assay, and they've come at that threshold through logic and research, and they're unlikely to want to do that because they want to ensure that horses remain safe. So in terms of trainers and owners losing money, that's an unfortunate aspect, and that's where some form of compensation may be payable.
Certainly, but of course the welfare of the horse must be paramount at all times. I think that's what every racing fan, despite your favourability of Estimate and such horses, that's paramount, Mark, and I'm sure that's the sort of view that you take on it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for joining us and giving us a great insight there from the veterinary perspective. Can I ask you one more question, Mark, not related to the use of morphine, but actually on today's King George? I don't know whether you've had a look at the card, but from an anatomy point of view, the 3-year-old filly has to battle against the older 4-year-old colts. Is that physically, as I say, from an anatomy point of view, going to be a bit of a tough test?
That's always going to make it harder for her. We will wait to see how she does, won't we?
Okay, inconclusive, but we'll wait to see how the race pans out. Thanks for joining us, Mark. Wish you all the best, and we'll keep in touch to see how this morphine sort of story unravels as well.
Thank you.
Cheers, Mark. Bye-bye.